Hey everyone, welcome to week 7. I'm really excited about this week. It's a week focused on your reflection and what you truly believe about teaching and learning. So before I get started, I've added a couple resources here that I want you to take a look at this week. This first one is a link to Bill Gates' blog and his interview with a Teacher of the Year from Washington. And so it's interesting and I think might be valuable to hear from a teacher and kind of hear some of her philosophy of education in that video, and the blog also is really great, but it's about a 2-minute video. And then this is a link to a short teaching philosophy. It'll be short, it's shorter than what yours will be this week, but just an example of one that I connected with that I believe is similar from my beliefs to this teacher. So this is on a website, and it's just her teaching philosophy that she's put out there. So take a look at that. It might help to spark some ideas in your head about your teaching philosophy. So if we look at this week, again, it's all about you developing a philosophy of teaching and learning. Philosophy are your beliefs. It's going to be crucial that you read in your text this week, and I'm going to point out some really specific things that I want you to pay attention to. This quote right here is from the teacher interview at the beginning. You have your philosophy of education paper that is due this week. So you're going to submit this to me by Sunday. In your paper, you're going to respond to these questions. Please use these questions as like subheadings, so bold and underline them and then respond underneath. This paper, it's totally acceptable to use the word I believe, I think, in reflecting on my years as a student, I believe, whatever that might be, but it's totally acceptable to use those. This is your first personal philosophy about teaching and learning. As you grow and learn, your philosophy is going to change. My philosophy now in year 9 of teaching is not totally different. I still believe in some of the same things, but I've added to my philosophy and I've adjusted it and I've changed based on things that I've learned. Down in my core, I believe certain things, and that's because of experiences that I've had. You're going to notice those same things, and you're going to notice that's referenced in your textbook. So this is due on Sunday. I've given an example here of how you can give credit to either the philosophy or the researcher or the teacher that you read about this week. Give them credit if you're using their idea. So that's an example of how I would do that in my paper here. This week's discussion, my goal for this week's discussion is to help you kind of sift through your ideas. So I want you to use the discussion as a sounding board and a place to share some of the things you're thinking about for your philosophy. I'm going to read your philosophy paper. I'll read the whole thing, but not everybody in this class gets that opportunity. So I want you to share out like some of the things you're thinking. Maybe as you're reading some of the ideas you connect with. Whose ideas? What are they called? If you're struggling with something, throw that in the discussion post. Not really sure what I think here, possibly thinking this or this. Sometimes just processing and writing that down and letting other people read that, they might chime in with a comment and be able to help you with that. So again, this is due by Thursday. My goal then is that if you are struggling with something, you can throw it on here and other students will comment for you and help you out with that, as I will be reading them as well. These questions to consider are some ideas that you could share about. By no means do you have to use those or respond to all of those. I just really want the discussion to be of benefit to you. Okay, so as we dive into some of the learning you're going to have this week, again, this is your first philosophy that you're going to write. When you write your beliefs, though, it's very important that when you get to action in the classroom, you're actually doing it. Not this is what I believe, but this is what my actions show. You got to walk the talk. So if you believe something, you'd better make it happen for your students in the classroom. In some of my conversations and in some of the learning that I've had, it's observing teachers that think one way and respond to students in another way. And that's really tricky for students, especially as you get a little bit older in age, that they start to realize that. So you got to really think about that with your philosophy. A couple of things that I want to point out. On page 240, which is one of the last pages of the chapter, I think this part is really crucial and something I want you to hone into. The changing focus. In any given day in a classroom, the focus shifts from teacher to students and back again. This is not wishy-washy, but rather a fact of the profession. Much as a skilled photographer will shift the focus on a scene to emphasize a pick up an unusual feature, an effective teacher is able to view the classroom as a vibrant life form, taking note of all movement and features. An effective teacher constantly has a gauge on what's happening, is using the feedback from students to then make decisions on the spot. I know some of you can think of teachers that you've had that have this, and teachers that you've had that don't have this. Think about that as you're developing your philosophy. In doing so, the teacher may find it necessary to redirect student attention or perhaps momentarily call a halt to an activity. Learning how to combine parts of a different educational philosophies for the benefit of all the students may be one of the hardest tasks a new teacher must learn. And I definitely believe in that. And that's part of the learning that you'll have in your practicums, in your student teaching, and then as you're teaching. A couple other pieces I want to point out to you, and I really want you to think and reflect about, is on page 237, the teacher-focused classrooms. Room arrangement may not be the best clue as to a teacher's views on what and how children should learn, but it is an indicator. Picture students seated in individual islands, separate from other students, with eyes directed toward a teacher at the front of the room, explaining or demonstrating something the students are expected to remember. The students are quiet, the teacher is talking. We've seen examples of this style of teaching in movies and on television. Unfortunately, in most of these examples, the teacher is oblivious to what the students are doing or thinking. The sad reality of it is, some of you have probably experienced teachers like this. So I want you to really reflect on who are teachers that you have had that have made an impact on your learning and your success. If you want to model your teaching after them, how effective are they? I want you to think about that. Because we talk about this as being in movies. This is a reality of classrooms still today, that the whole idea of teaching and learning has to shift. So I'm excited to read your philosophies to see what you're thinking. Really important, I'm working backwards in the chapter, really important for you to read the psychological perspective. So Dewey and Pavlov, those names are going to be people that you're going to want to be familiar with. Vygotsky, especially as you get into college and take your educational psych course, which all of you will be required to take if you continue as a teacher or to continue down the path of education. There's a teacher referenced in the chapter from Iowa, which was super exciting, Diane McCarty. So make sure to pay attention to her. Grant Wiggins, Howard Earl Gardner, which we've already learned about with the multiple intelligences. So he's referenced again. Hilda Taba. These teachers and their philosophies and things that are shared in this chapter will be things that you need to read and think about. Is this something that I also believe in? Do I connect to this educator in what they believe in? Okay, read chapter 7. It's got a ton of stuff that's going to help you out in developing your philosophy. Also, make sure that you use the discussion as a sounding board and let me know what questions you have. Keep plugging away at those observation hours for those of you who have like 4 and 5. Don't wait until the last week to get those done. Thanks. Have a great week.